Good evening. My name is Maud L. Driscoll, and I'm the Executive Director of the Frost Place. We have a wonderful reading tonight with two special readers. The first is Hee Lee, who's our 9th annual Frost Place chapbook winner, sponsored by Bull City Press. Born in South Korea, raised in Peru, Hee Lee is an immigrant scholar, translator, and poet currently living in Milwaukee. She's the author of two poetry chapbooks, Bedtime Riverbed, Compound Press 2017, and Dear Bear, Platypus Press 2021. She holds an MFA from the University of Notre Dame, where she was awarded an Academy of American Poets Prize and a PhD in Literature and Creative Writing from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Her poetry has been published or is forthcoming at the Georgia Review, New England Review, Southern Review, and elsewhere, and of course, a wonderful chapbook from Bull City Press. Tiana Clark, judge of the 2021 Frost Place Chapbook Competition and a former chapbook fellow herself, said of Conotary, Hee's book, there's an exquisiteness to the jewel-like poems inside Conotary. This is a poet that polishes every line with stunning prosody, imagery, and keen attention to aesthetics. Each poem shimmers as the poet investigates the endless relationship to family and language. Korean, Spanish, and English are braided throughout the chapbook as the speaker in these poems negotiates the idea of home and what we lose, gain, carry, pass down, and offer up inside the various translations. Each poem is a gleaming facet. Each poem is a miracle of its own making. Each poem is a gesture at defining the abstractions and comparisons between words and worlds. I was left in awe at the dazzling mastery. In addition to hearing from Hee Lee's forthcoming chapbook, we have reading for us tonight our poetry seminar director, Patrick Donnelly. About Patrick Donnelly, Gregory Orr wrote, everything he writes is suffused with tenderness and intelligence, lucidity and courage. Donnelly is the author of 4 books of poetry, most recently little-known operas from 4-Way Books in 2019. Former poet laureate of Northampton, Massachusetts, his poems have appeared in American Poetry Review, Hayden's Fair Review, the Massachusetts Review, Plowshares, Slate, Yale Review, and many other journals. He's taught at Smith College, Colby College, the Lesley University MFA program, and many others. Donnelly's translations with Stephen D. Miller of classical Japanese poetry were awarded the 2015-2016 Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission Prize for the translation of Japanese literature. I'm very happy and proud to bring to you these two special readers. Please join me in welcoming Hee Lee.
Hello. Before I begin reading, I just want to thank the Frost Place for inviting me to this place. I always find that in these kind of seminars and conferences, there's just still so much to learn about like poetry and the world, and I have been learning so much from my fellow workshop mates and Patrick and Model, and I'm sure Martha tomorrow too. I just feel very, very fortunate to be here alongside you all. And as Model, so I will be reading from my chapbook, Conotary, and it's coming out this October, and the title, I just want to explain a little bit. Conotary is a word I made up. It's a melding of the word connotation and dictionary. And I imagine this book as a kind of dictionary where instead of offering like literal definitions, I was translating words into my own personal connotations. I'll start with hue as in between. So hue which I translate as in between. At all sides, the train slipped away from us. My sister and I play red light, green light, but with eyes closed and singing instead. The Hibiscus Syriacus has bloomed again. Our mother glances at the platform clock on us as we practice the art of climbing stairs. Slowly, anoint each step with the shadows of scissors, wolves, shapeshifters we call hands. It's a quiet and passionate affair to dwell in the meanwhile, with a waiting so bright, red like the beads of jujube fruits our grandmother used to dry out in the yard so they would amass all the sweetness of the world in their little bodies. She told me nothing is wasted in waiting and to be grateful for the sun, which won't ever hurry. Years after, she's no longer with us. I hum 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다, and a train nuzzles the station as it arrives, arrives, and arrives. This next poem is called Chicago as Re-Entry Ritual, and it's Chicago because every time I would travel between Peru and Korea, usually I've often ended up entering the US through Chicago. Chicago is my point of entry city because I lived in the Midwest usually. So Chicago as Re-Entry Ritual. I've become an expert at packing exactly 50 pounds worth of breadcrumbs. The luggage, the head I unload mid-flight. I leave, a snowy trail over the Pacific. The fish swallow my way back, but I know the tail will remain. Upon landing, I look back, my eyes crusted with salt. I wander through the labyrinth of customs, praying for safe passage in a mixed tongue. What's the purpose of your visit? They ask. What's the purpose of me? I ask and answer myself. To be reunited with love waiting at every side of a border. To consider a country isn't the womb, though a womb can be a country. To carry the migrant dust on my limbs, the remnant skin cells from people who embraced me goodbye. To let them weigh my hems. To die like a candle to a kiss at each point of entry. Rename my departures into returns. Before I read the next poem, I want to share that the name Alejandra comes up a couple of times in this book, and it's because it's a stand-in name for my childhood friend's actual name. And the word Trujillo is the name of my hometown in Peru, where I grew up. So this poem is called Trujillo as Homecoming. Alejandra welcomes me back to our first home. Her arms wide ferns, her fingers wispy, fronds curling towards me, towards a small sun blushing on my cheek. She puckers her lips to greet the wind which sings secretly close to my ear. Alejandra welcomes me back and my heart stutters. I don't remember whether to turn my face left or right. I whisper, it's okay, es normal, for there to be sorrow in forgetting how to cross through gaps, now filled with gossamer veils of time. 괜찮아, Está bien for people to become strangers to their own bodies. Question why absences insist on weaving something new. Alejandra welcomes me back. So I go, receive her beso. I am furled deeper into green under the embrace of lush, unfamiliar arms. This one's called Mending as San Agustin. It's said that by gifting shoes to your loved ones, you risk them leaving you. Yet my father suggests I should try on the ones in the shop window, fully in the knowledge they'll spirit me away. The shoes are tanned leather, the color of quail. They hold me up like bones. They carry me to Michigan along the lake in search of bus stops through snow, coasting highways. They stop at the occasional orange lamplight suspended in Indian darkness. They collapse gradually, steadily at the heels. Both of their toe tips bruise with salt. Once the strings finish fraying, they gape like lilies, tired from completing a blossoming. It's summer. We go back to Trujillo, where a desert's winter begins to whistle. My mother takes us to the cobbler by the church of San Agustin. She haggles while I keep the shoes tucked under my arms, covering their eyes as if they were a small animal. In the airport again, caught in a layover, my eyes fall upon the new soles, stamped with a brand I don't recognize. The letter has been painted over, but some scratches remain for good. For this which warms my feet, for every senseless reason considered enough, gratitude knots my heart tighter. Around me, crowded steps land on polished floor, sounding a mess of colorful pearls spinning off into all directions. This poem is called Midwest as Equinox. For most of my life, I slept by the music of sand dunes shifting year long. But today I wake up, spot a snowflake melting into the window's glass. I think I'll never grasp the true width of the world, but even this land is a trickster, bidding the ivory humps of winter leviathans to thaw into strings of water, scurry and make a sea out of a sloping garden. I hurry outside. I witness the way a warm whisper rouses children of tiny green fingers. So this poem is actually a funny little poem for me, since Trujillo is called the city of eternal spring, la ciudad de la eterna primavera, but it's located in the desert. And it's also funny because I didn't realize until I started living in the Midwest, where you have all the 4 seasons, that if you live somewhere where spring is technically eternal, you don't really get to see the start of spring, right? You never know when spring starts because it's always spring. So it was just so wonderful that first time I realized, oh, I went outside, I was like, oh, spring is starting. This is how it looks like. And I just remember that moment. So that's how I wrote the poem, and it has a special place in my heart. The next poem is called Korea as Things to Review Before Landing. So Korea Things to Review Before Landing. Number 1, my origin story. My mother found me as a chestnut dangling from a tree. When I fell into her lap, she was eating a copper pear with one hand, paging through a book with the other. She carried out the burr in the hollow of her arms, and the spiny cupel made her bleed, but she didn't let go until I broke out from the shell. Later, I sprouted needles anew, afraid I was being nibbled away by the world. Number 2, my grandfather's name. I thought my grandfather's name was 할아버지, only to find out it was the Korean word for grandfather. He was the one who taught me and my sister to sail a paper kite over a frozen river, to allow my index to flirt with its mercurial tail. Number 3, an idiom. When I was given a norige to hang under my first hanbok jacket, I foresaw a pendulous love in my life. I alternated between laughing and sobbing. Short horns appeared on my back. From then on, a childlike misfortune took the shape of a blank page and muffled my steps in every new country I called home. I didn't want her at first, but eventually grew fond of her, held her hand when she cried at night. Number 4, a road. The one I took to school when I lived in Changyu for that 1 year. I studied the occasional bush of Ricecias flowers on the side, prodding yellow against an absolute autumn sky. This poem is called 목욕탕, as inside a 목욕탕 is a public bath in Korea where there's a couple of them in each city at least, and everyone kind of comes in and can take a bath together. But it's actually rather amazing and intimate experience where because everyone is walking around naked. But I remember like every time I would come back to Korea, I would just be like, it would take me a while to get used to it again. But it's called 목욕탕 as inside. Excuse me. From the entrance, the steam smells of pine leaf and boiled eggs. I sink into one of the hot tubs, quickly become raw skin, conditioned timidity I can't reason away, mauve heat, blush with a nervous eye on a towel, which assured me it would conceal the soft folds of my stomach. I'm not alone. There are others more accustomed to bareness close by. Today, we all wear the same teal waters, every quivering droplet. Together, we treat the tiled floor as moons of milk fat, of dark budding nipples and creviced thighs, of wide stony hips, of tender skin, exfoliated from mineral sweat and grime. And I, pulse and curve, feel lightheaded in the warm water, or the beauty of something so ordinary, like the body. Inside this 목욕탕, I start to believe I can hide away from eyes and words that hunger. I lean back, drift into a time long before shame was something to dress for. Next, a short one. It's called Madrugada as small hours. 6:03 a.m. and unripe sunlight percolates through the air, canopy of oak, window, and yellow curtain into my living room. It must have been a day like this, the birth of a word, the word and offering hatching within a fertile mind. The instance, a small god many have beheld at least once, a large jellyfish with the body of an unraveling clementine passing through. The house billows, luminous cells skip across the walls, and even the gray couch gleams, flecks of morning made crescent with the shadow of leaf. And this is the last poem I'll be reading. for today. It's called Naturalization as Migration. At a pottery sale, I buy nothing. Only consider this turquoise ribbed vase baked into a glass of rivers, slightly slanted to the left. So cheap, perhaps a uniqueness mistaken for a mistake. I'm convinced of its fragility, its ceramic pelvis, the space it would take up in the immigration bag my parents passed down to me. Dark foldable closet I've dragged from country to country. When I was younger, I orphaned many books. Now I just carried this guilt, a longing for roots, a garland of delicate hair seeping slowly into soil, into vase. But I'm no perennial green. I have feet, eager to get naked, moved by the seasons not here yet. They ask me to chase their undulating animal dreams. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Patrick Donnelly, director of this poetry seminar, and thank you, Hee. We're so thrilled to have you with us and to hear you read your work. That was really beautiful. And I want to thank our faculty and participants for making this such a great experience. I especially want to thank my own workshop for sticking with a process, which, while it can be very enjoyable, is also real work in the best sense. I'm going to begin with a couple of poems from my most recent book, and then I'll read new work. For this book, Little Known Operas, thank you, Four-Way Books, thank you, Martha Rhodes, thank you, Ryan Murphy, thank you, thank you, thank you. The first two poems come as a pair. The first one is a persona poem made out of one aspect of my own neuroses. And in the second poem, I was interested in how different voices in a sequence can explicitly contradict one another. Not a new idea, of course, but we don't always have to write as ourselves. In which I explain why I set the fire. Well, it began with a microburst from the north when the moon was hot and bright on the 26th of the 5th month. The first obstacle that wind met was the top of a white pine in the neighbor of the right's yard, which it shoved aslant the transformer with a flash, killing the AC for 3 days and spoiling the fish. The other white pine, its mate, the one I think of as male, didn't break. But afterward, every time I walked to the mailbox, I had to say one broken, one whole, and lift my hands over my head, whether I liked it or not. The same night, the sycamore of the hayfield of the right, the one to which we make offerings at the new year, let fall into its crotch a log tall as a man. This tree already weirdly suckled a young mimosa in a few cups of soil in a high vertical cleft, which explains why the sycamore is worthy and why, not caring that drivers would stare, I used to clap my hands each time I passed. But when the wind gave the sycamore this lingam, a member taller than a man, it was disturbing and not irrelevant. I tried to lift and lay the extra part parallel to the road, but it was heavier than 3 rough men bound together, mechanics, say, or gas jockeys with slashes of black lubricant on their cheeks, and I could not. One of the tree crews, gangs of bravos that came from this state and Connecticut and Vermont, lifted the crown and shoulders of the female white pine off the wires, cut her into 30-inch rounds, and trucked all but the sawdust away. But because to a rude man they had no visual sense, they left the bollard log hung from the sycamore, which the farmer of the right also did nothing to rectify. Nor was this all. At the north border of the hayfield of the left, a poplar shaped like a champagne flute fell perpendicular to the road that splits the two hayfields. Now, perpendicular is better than crooked, of course, though this turned up a clump of root that could scrape the paint off the right side of your car as you drive toward our house. But this also was not all. The tree did not die, though prostrated 40.5 feet into the hayfield of the left, which then no longer formed a neat rectangle as seen from the house. No longer perfect, it hurt me. The farmer of the left did not come with a chainsaw and cut the champagne flute flush to the tree line, nor with a backhoe and a thick cable to right it. No, after that, he let the flute lie recumbent and mowed around it, for which there was, good Lord, no word. What would you have called it? How would you have fixed it? This dish of dog mess, God mess, flung to the six directions. I lived this way long as I could. I tried to breathe release, be tolerant, busy inside my fells. Now I don't apologize. The only way to cauterize a wound is with fire. Oh, it hurt me, but now it is better. Wipe your feet. Don't track the ash inside. Poem contradicting the previous poem. He says the owner of the hayfield did nothing, and it is true, he waited almost a year. But on the last day of April, 3 men came with a truck, a tractor, and a chainsaw, cut the fallen tree, pulled the brush into the woods, and left only tire tracks on the new grass. There was no fire. There was never any fire. A long time ago, one of my teachers said I was drawn to what she called the ode of obsessive attraction, and she wasn't wrong. Here's a little group of them from my new poems. The first one is in the form of a fable. Aficionado. He worked as a diver, pocketing $300 an hour for welding underwater, checking intake valves for barnacles and mussels, retrieving the occasional corpse from under the mossy docks. Once the face of a dead girl swam into his vision while he was working. He was full of stories like this. He was small and fine, and every evening when he was dry, he waxed his mustaches to a sharp point. The muscles of his chest were so deeply cleft that my right hand, if he had let it, might have disappeared. Another of his stories was that in late autumn, he began to notice a gray squirrel staring at him from outside his third-floor window. One morning, he woke to find an acorn on his pillow. Later, another nut in the bowl of a spoon, in the toe of a navy dress shoe, in the pouch of his jock, somehow at the back of a locked drawer. We lost touch when he moved to a houseboat on the river. My hand thinks of him sometimes. What is compulsion? Compulsion is when you go to Venice alone, and then you haunt the narrow corridors at night, circling the blackened palaces. Long after the market closed, cobbles strewn with mint and crushed flowers, you watch a waiter lower the umbrellas, stack the chairs, and hose the pavement. And when he finally appears, about 20 and no English, you'll shadow him past the Fenice, follow his gesture up the endless stairs. At first, you don't see his old parents on the couch, lit by an American game show. And when you finally reach his tiny room at the top of the house, each waiting for the other to confirm why we are here, you'll do nothing but sit on the narrow bed and smoke, exhaling your homeless blue breaths. How's everybody doing?
Great.
To the drunken mother of the boy I kissed in a dream. I was surprised he wanted that too. I know you only gave me the first floor apartment so you could spy on us while you stabbed trash on the berm with a pointy stick. The girl in bed with us was just our friend. I had no particular plans to kiss her. I shouted through the window, I know it looks bad, but we decided to take a nap together. Naked, yes, but if, as Gerald Durrell wrote in his book about zoo design, it's more humane to house animals that don't like one another, think snakes and monkeys, where they can see but not get at each other on account of how it makes life interesting to have an enemy, then, because my dream ended right after you caught us, you are my enemy, and you will always be that, you parlous mongoose, you bibulous asp. Dirk McDermott, fellow scout who could climb and touch the gold ball at the top of a flagpole and do math 3 grades ahead under his crew cut. I need a calculator to figure how long since I spoke his name, how long since I offered my own blue neckerchief to wipe his always runny nose. But last night, in smoke, steam, and rain beside a wrecked train, I told him how happy I felt in the igloo we'd built, how handsome a cub he'd been crawling on all fours up the twilit tunnel to me, in a hoarse whisper, and never looking at his face. I've been writing about my mother for almost as long as I had a mother. I wrote a whole book called Nocturnes of the Brothel of Ruin that was almost all about her. But apparently there's more to say. True story. To my mother, dead these 13 years, I said, I hate your moods. I have always hated them. In response, she gave one of her narrative sighs and slammed the baffling door. I'd given up and turned to go when I heard her bone hand crack open the door of horn, and then, for good, forever, tender, impersonal, hopeless, comical, again, I heard her wind hand push the horn door shut. About a year before my father left, my mother demanded to know why I'd written on my sheets in blue ballpoint. With my allowance, she said I'd go myself and buy another sheet with a high thread count. A mystery, the writing was in French. Nobody I knew spoke French, though I'd always thought it would be exciting to be observed speaking in French, answering the telephone, for instance. Oui, allô? les grands jets d'eau sveltes parmi les marbres? When can you deliver the great slender fountains between the marbles? I require them tout de suite. I didn't remember having written in French, and nobody raised the question of who else might have access. Once I'd woken to find a bricklayer sitting on the edge of my bed. It's true I'd followed him around the yard a day earlier, helping him mix his cement, but I don't want to spoil this sheet, writing a memory instead of a mystery. Suppose I did write it. If so, it seems a person can copy a text from the future without being able to understand it. It seems it's possible to live unhappily, not even believing in happiness at all, while bearing inside a secret language of romance, maybe a whole nation of wine and light and perfume. How was I supposed to grow up straight when already at 10 I knew the Latin for the son is the husband of his mother? How many midnights did my mother load the LP of Oedipus Rex, Lower the Needle, Stravinsky himself conducting for her raccoon eyes and her benzos, as she leaned alone, mercy, mercy, onto the love seat in her corduroy caftan covered with strawberries. The next poem includes a couple of phrases from an Old English poem called The Wanderer in a translation by my mother, Dorothy Bess Donnelly. The phrases are, joy is a ghost, hopes may hover but fail to flower. Buick Skylark with alcoholic. My mother was poor, on welfare at the end, but still imperial to her home health aides. They were getting fatter every day and stupider, not remembering where the last fucking silver forks belonged. She said she'd read everything 40 years ago, Mallory, Browning, Eliot, Unamuno, and then she said she'd forgotten it all. Richard Strauss is all sex and no orgasm, she said to me when I was 10 years old. Many nights, she said, mix my scotch, then till 4 a.m. stacked records on the hi-fi, Stravinsky, Stan Freberg, The Sound of Silence. In grad school, she translated The Wanderer better than the Oxford Companion to English Lit. She never said that. I said it after she was gone, to myself. She got the alliterative tetrameter, midline caesuras, the Norse mind, everything. She sold her old Skylark with appealing leather to her aide Carmen for $1. Every detail of that transaction illegal. But joy is a ghost. Hopes may hover but fail to flower. One Christmas, I borrowed that car back, and because of Carmen's many DUIs, had to blow into its breathalyzer to start it, then blow again when it died in the middle of the intersection. Everyone in that little desert town judging me, innocent princeling, for a poor woman's crime. You can't see the next poem, but there's no punctuation in it. And I was experimenting with running sentences together. So some clauses seem to govern what comes before or after or both. The purest thing. Panicking in the MRI canal, I almost made them end it. Only the shame of needing to start over kept me from pressing the bulb the technician said was super sensitive. After sciatic flashes, I wanted to shout, "Don't forget me," a mistake to ask for the local classical station. The pounding began they had warned me about, Schubert's string quartet in C major, interrupted by the composer's death. But Then came the screech that always precedes an emergency warning, a flood in the northern counties. Don't drive into water that may seem shallow. Wait on your roof for help to arrive. I tried to do what the old texts advise, hold in mind holy things, the words of certain prayers, but summoned at last the only pure thing I could think of. The ending of Short Bus, the look on Suk Yin Lee's face when after years of faking and struggle, she finally achieved orgasm. Let our poor bodies cry glory through the bloody changes, the tunnel, the doubt, the tunnel, the shaking, and the roar. The uses of pain. When they wheel us from surgery, we feel none. But as we begin to stir, they ask us to rate our pain 1 to 10 and wrap us in sheets from the warming cabinet. Green clogs and shower caps move around, asking where is the key to the narc closet. A dad offers a graham cracker to a boy's lips, saying, if I was the one hurt, wouldn't you feed me? Then just let me. A woman refuses to give her pain a number, only more, less, better, worse. Some strange doctor spins through, how are you, good? Slapping the panel to make the big double doors swing wide. Okay then, good luck, and he's gone. I beat a man once with my fists and belt for his pleasure and mine. Each of us certain the other was paying attention. Picture us after, poor and tender as swaddled saints, and shriven clean, like when one has wept for a long time. If anyone had tried to offer us love, we would have carried it in our mouths to the nearest dunghill and let it fall. The enthusiasms of innocence. Innocence is indeed a kind of insanity, my love, an affliction disguised by charm. At the conservatory in my 20s, I knew Peter G., a combined piano and cannabis major who carried the whole mind of adolescence into his adulthood. At the end of every day, his cheek wore a 5 o'clock shadow, but he was still a boy who could sing all the patter songs from Gilbert and Sullivan in Yiddish and would and did and did. His mouth twisted with any musical exertion, little rascal making the difficult marble shot. And in winter, he wore a bath towel for a scarf. From mailing tubes and duct tape, he made all the instruments needed to perform a satire of Bach and taught himself to play them. The windbreaker, the left-handed sewer flute, the lasso d'amore, and we laughed until we were sick. But after a time, Peter began to shoot from behind his thick black horn rims looks of longing toward a girl who played the viola. Then, when nothing came of it, which the innocent don't yet understand is the default outcome, it seemed he almost came to hate her and to hate desire itself, which had no place in the life of a boy. In his towel, he trudged the streets, muttering, willow, titwillow. In late spring, there's a moment the wind fingers the blossoms, and then they should fall. The enthusiasms of innocence were lies. I said, I can't be with a man who hasn't accepted falling. Your eyes, my love, opened a long time ago in all of the 5 ways. Someday, even the grasses and trees will open their eyes. Last poem. Thank you very, very much for listening. Travel log. When the wind crosses Nebraska, there's an eclat to the hip-deep grasses, food of creatures who took birth to be meat. A cornflower I picked in the parking lot in Kearney wilted at the neck 40 miles from its own dirt. We have to pay close attention to keep the long truck above the speed that makes us shake. On a blue and white cup packed in the back, a windmill reflects in the river. A man drives his sheep through the gorse. Belong to your mom. Everything is in the truck, your parents and mine. The road built for us by those who exploded the rock to make the rough places plain. And now the way is plain and straight and dangerous and boring. Marcus Aurelius said, "Consider that animals are buried in the bodies of those who feed upon them." I thought, then we're our mama's graves out here cruising the highways. An emperor might envy how we can push a button at the rest stop to hear about the weather ahead. We've lived through 3 days with only a cooler full of tea and bread. Could I live in Iowa, you ask, if a job for you came open there? Crossing the Mississippi in rain, watching for signs, we talked about what we would do if we were young, and I said, yes, we should do it. Thank you so much.